that was left out. But besides that, I think for the first time, India has a comprehensive energy policy. You're looking at the bigger picture. We've seen the transitions, the differences you've made. A, to India's climate policy, the stand which India has taken, and B, also to the supply side scenario, particularly as far as power is concerned. We've seen that in June 2013, I think it was, India had the dubious distinction of having had the biggest blackout in the history of the world, because there was not enough supply available and states, the grid had started overdrawing power. Now all that is history. From a supply side problem, it is actually today a demand side problem. First of all, how did this come about? I want to hear you on this.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be at the Raisina dialogue once again. And in some sense, the title of your program today, The New Normal, is what is reflected also in the power sector. To my mind, what really helped change the scenario from one of perpetual shortages and the pessimism of never being able to change what was happening for decades, if I may venture to suggest, the difference was in mindset. The difference was in our ability to be bold that this is a challenge, we accept the challenge, and let's find solutions to change the situation. And while trying to change the situation, I think the only thing we did differently from the past was to look at things with a clinical business management approach. We prioritized what are the challenges, what are the problems the industry faces. We did a root cause analysis to see which are the areas where greater thrust and focus needs to be brought in. A little bit of close monitoring of the various government programs to hold people accountable to their work. Brought in a few innovative financial models to help stalled projects get back onto stream. In fact, I think one of the critical elements during that period was that all the stalled projects at whichever stage, whether at environment, land, financing, we would look at each of those projects, address their concerns and issues, get them on track. See the transmission projects in the country, many of them languishing for years and years. Talk to the stakeholders, get them back on track. Talk to all the coal companies, see what are the inhibiting factors, where the mine permission is left at the state government level, whether at the environment ministry level, whether there's a land issue, start resolving them, pay money, and not in the obtuse sense, pay money to the landowners wherever we owe them, pay money to contractors wherever they legitimately are owed money. And I think the simple management techniques helped us reach where we are today.
Thanks. I mean, it's been a tremendous achievement. But the problem now is arising on the other side, the obverse side. As I said, from a supply side problem, it's become a demand side problem. So let me probe a little further on that. Now, you have about 30 gigawatts of new coal-based capacity, which is kind of struggling with low plant load factors because there are no off-takers. There's not sufficient offtake. Is this actually a demand-side problem? Is it more a problem with the distribution side, where the demand is not picking up sufficiently? The distributors are not supplying power in areas where it is required because they actually save money by not selling power.
I would think it's a little bit of everything. First of all, I must share with you one problem that as a nation we have had in the past, that if there was even a small shortage, it got exaggerated to such an extent and so many people jumped into the bandwagon that assuming that not everybody will survive, assuming that not everybody will come on track at the slated time as per plans, people thought that they would be smart and they would be lucky and get away with it. So at a time when really India had a 10-12% power shortage, the amount of capacities that were sought to be created were about 3 or 4 times what the shortage was. And in the process, what happened was that when the new Modi government came in and we started resolving people's problems, all that 3 or 4 times capacity started getting implemented. And we suddenly had, in the first 2 years itself, about 45,000 megawatts, 45 gigawatt of thermal capacity getting added into the system, getting commissioned. Now that's huge when one looks at the typical amount of electricity. Right now, for example, on any normal working day, our grid is consuming about 136 gigawatt, 136 gigawatt of power at peak levels. Now, when you've added 45 gigawatts additional to that within 2 years, you can imagine the huge amount of capacity that's added, and obviously whatever be the demand shortages. I mean, I tell on many occasions, I am on record to say that if you were all to demand 50% more power starting tomorrow, today India has the capacity to generate 50% more power from tomorrow itself. And I think that mindset, that confidence has come into the system that we can meet any amount of power that the country needs. As regards the distribution sector's problems, clearly we have some infrastructure bottlenecks for which we are investing about $20 billion through the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana and the Integrated Power Development Scheme, so that the infrastructure can be upgraded at the state level. There are occasionally some states which do not buy power, despite there being demand. But that number is gradually reducing, that quantity is reducing. By and large, I go around the country continuously. I have not heard any state complaining, any people of any state complaining, save and except one or two which, because in view of the current situation, I cannot talk about them. But by and large, the states, all of South India has 24/7 power. All of Western India has 24/7 power. Even a loss-making state like Rajasthan, where Vasundhara Raje had inherited a almost $2.2 billion annual loss when she became chief minister in 2013, is endeavoring to give 24 hours power to everybody and adequate power, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever the farmers require regularly. I think after we signed the Power for All document, Power for All 24/7 document, with almost all the states, after Tamil Nadu joined our efforts last week, there's only one state in the country. Of course, it's the largest state, and we really need them to come on board if we have to take power to every citizen in this country. That's the only state which has not yet signed Power for All 24/7 document. I don't know whether the leadership of that state does not wish to give power to their people. But then the jury is out, the people will decide, and then maybe after a couple of months, we'll be in a position to get that state on board also to take power to every citizen of this country, while we are committed that before 2022, every home in this country will have 24/7 power. On a personal note, I'm trying to do it even earlier. And I would love to see that by end of 2019, we can take power to every home in this country.
So another major change which happened was India, was perceived as the outlier in previous climate negotiations, was seen as a road bump to reaching a climate agreement. It dramatically changed in Paris, where India actually took a very aggressive stand, took on very aggressive commitments at INDCs, and became the facilitator for making the Paris Agreement possible. No, it was a complete change. Now, that is a tremendous achievement. You also launched the International Solar Alliance. So now my question is that what has been the response of other countries, particularly the developed world, regarding technology as well as finance for this alliance? How do you see this alliance progressing? And do you see any difficulties in meeting the kind of commitments that you have put on the table?
Well, Paris truly was an outstanding experience. I mean, I had the privilege of being there when Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi was spearheading the process of consensus and getting all the world leaders to come on one page. And I recall his approach was that India will not be the problem India will be the solution in Paris. And truly, he gave leadership to the entire process. Almost every world leader was looking to engage with Prime Minister Modi in Paris. I remember during the course of that one day on 30th of November 2015, there were leaders who were approaching our Foreign Office officials that even on the passage while walking, if we can spend a few minutes with Prime Minister Modi to be able to have a little dialogue. He truly was the tall leader of Paris. And to my mind, the single largest contribution of India, apart from building consensus, and probably the first time in world history, that over 190 countries could prepare a draft which was absolutely without any dissent. Yeah. So many countries with trying to resolve over 1,600 points of contention when we started out, and ending with complete unanimity. One large contribution of India in that was to bring in the concept of sustainable lifestyles. And I believe that will be a defining feature of the Paris Agreement, of the way climate change works in the years ahead. We do believe waste has to be eliminated, irrespective of where the waste is. We do believe that the developed world will have to be conscious of their responsibilities. I mean, you go around any part of the world, you will find large buildings, 100, 150-story buildings, fully lit up with not a single person working in them, office buildings, all through the night. And on a lighter note, in one of the conferences on renewable energy in Washington, when I had raised this issue, and I actually from my phone showed some pictures to the assembled audience about how lights were lit up in tall office buildings through the night with nobody working there, and what kind of a colossal waste it is. I remember one of the co-panelists saying, but oh, we have to sell our electricity somewhere. And I was amazed at that answer. I said, here we are trying to struggle to save the planet. And here is a nation almost living as if we have another planet to go to after we've messed up this planet. But I'm glad that we were able to bring in sustainable lifestyles into the Paris document. Another big achievement was continuing the common but differentiated responsibility principle. Yet I do believe that a lot has to be seen and heard from the developed world about their contributions to low-cost, long-tenor financing. We really haven't seen much movement on technology sharing. And as India mentioned when we joined the Paris Agreement, we will certainly be looking to see how the developed world comes up to its commitments when made in Paris. After Kyoto, they have not yet fulfilled the commitments that were made, particularly relating to finance. I hope the same history is not repeated post-2020.
I'd like to open the floor up for questions. You can come to the mics and please keep them short. You can please move to the mics. Meanwhile, sir, I'll just ask one more question while the questioners line up at the mics on either side. If you have mics, you can take them. Now, India has set extremely aggressive targets for renewable generation. 200 gigawatts, of which 100 gigawatts are going to be solar-fired capacity. The question which is being asked today, and that is being asked by many power experts, is that without having sufficient expansion in spinning reserves, that is basically gas-based and hydro-based power, how do you work for grid stability in these conditions if we go in with this huge expansion? So what is being done in expansion of the spinning reserves?
3 or 4 things which we are working on. One, hydro is a focus area of this government. We are focusing first to get the stalled hydro projects back on track, because unless these stalled projects got operational, nobody's going to put more money in hydro with other projects remaining stalled. So that's one area where we are working, and hydro will provide some element of spinning reserves. We have about 24 gigawatts of gas-based plants. Many of them are working at very low capacity utilization. Our effort is that we try and tie up gas at a reasonable price, but not totally linked to the Henry Hub as it is now. Because we can't have power costs go shooting up like it did when gas became $16 at one point of time. But at about $5.5, gas-based power generation is viable. So we are talking to different countries and companies to see if we can get longer-term hedged contracts, not linked to the Henry Hub. If that comes through, I'll like to see all these gas plants also get into larger numbers of operation. We are also working on technology to see whether our thermal plants can be ramped up and down much quickly, faster. If we are successful in that, that I think will be a defining way to get spinning reserves into the Indian context. And lastly, of course, we are also observing and closely seeing how battery storage prices firm up. We are doing some small experiments with storage, but on a larger scale, storage could provide a spinning reserve going forward as prices of battery storage fall.
Okay, now we are open to questions. We do not have much time, so keep your questions brief. If any of the young fellows need to ask any questions, would like to ask questions, they're most welcome. They can line up. You, sir, please introduce yourself.
4 questions and then answer them together.
Yeah, we'll pick them up.
Good evening, sir. My name is Angad Mehta. I'm interning with MEA here. First of all, if I could, I would like to dispel the minister's confusion over why our largest state has not joined the Power for All campaign. It's not because they don't want Power for All, it's perhaps because they are busy otherwise. To my question, one of our plans, schemes for 2022 is to get 100 gigawatts from solar, and one of the details of that is 40 gigawatts from off-grid. However, the lack of progress, I think, from there is disappointing. I think 60 gigawatts is from grid power, solar grid, but 40 gigawatts of distributed solar power is not materializing. So if you could give your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Goyal, in some parts of the world...
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Sarvjit Dudeja. I am a consultant advisor in science and technology.
Doctor?
Sarvjit Dudeja. In some parts of the world, people are using solar panel on the roads. A truck can move on it, heavy trucks. So do we have this type of plan in India also to have a roads panel? And secondly, we have a transmission loss huge. So can we have some underground transmission also?
Yes, madam.
Thank you very much. My name is Janet Salem. I work for the United Nations Environment Programme. Thanks for mentioning sustainable lifestyles. It's something we work on. I was wondering, how do you think that the government could do, what do you think the government can do to support a vision of more sustainable lifestyles? And of course, I'm not talking about the poor having to consume less, but I'm talking about everyone consuming better and having a good standard of living, but in a very resource-efficient way. Thanks.
So, yeah.
Thank you. All three very, very good questions. To my young friend, Mr. Mehta, I grant you that the distributed solar, the rooftop, 40 gigawatts of rooftop program that we have initiated will take some more time to take off. The larger utility scale solar installations, particularly in the solar parks, are taking off very well. They've got a very good traction in the market. And we've been able to drive down prices through competitive bidding, economies of scale and better technology mix to very attractive levels. We are almost at par with thermal power now in the utility scale solar plants. On the rooftop, you must bear in mind that until 2 years ago when we came into power, the entire rooftop capacity, installed capacity in the entire country was only 200 megawatt. 200. And despite such a low base, we took the ambitious target of increasing it by 200 times to make it 40,000 megawatt. And we did it very consciously because we believe that instead of using up land as a resource to set up solar, the rooftops will make a lot of business sense. Transmission will also be easier. It will be directly connected to the consumer. And if there's any surplus power, it can go into the grid. So effectively making the consumer a prosumer also, a producer of power. But the process will have to be that first the larger scale projects will have to come on stream, bring the prices and technology levels in place before the rooftops can become viable, sustainable, and can be rolled out in a big way. Otherwise, the smaller installations at the rooftop will require large amounts of subsidy, government intervention, and will never make it possible to achieve such large targets. My own approach to this situation is subsidy can be an enabler in the short run for small quantities, but in the long run, the project has to be economically viable. Otherwise, subsidy will always be a constraint which will hold back large rollout. I'm trying that the larger scale, utility scale solar prices now having matured quite a bit, we are poised to attract the people at the homes and the offices and commercial establishments to look at rooftop solar. At these price levels, the rooftop solar becomes attractive. Otherwise, in the earlier regime, at 8 rupees, 9 rupees, rooftop solar was not attractive. A person preferred to buy from the grid. Now the consciousness is gradually setting in that at the lower prices of 5, 6 rupees on rooftop, it makes good business sense to replace it with your existing source of power. Excess power can be fed back into the grid, and you are assuring yourself of 25 years of power at the same price. You are locking yourself in, so effectively giving yourself energy security. But I was always conscious that it will have to be a stage-by-stage effort. If I had started focusing only on rooftop, I would never have been able to either scale it up or get the kind of price points that we are enjoying today. So you will see greater traction on rooftop going forward, particularly on industrial and commercial establishments. For the homes, I think we are still some time away, because at the domestic tariff levels, rooftop solar is still not always viable. Most cases, it's not viable. Dr. Sarabjit Dudeja talked about solar panels on road. I honestly think it's still at an experimental stage, and I don't see the situation that Indian roads are conducive to that. Neither will they be very viable. What really is happening is not solar panels on roads, as much as chargers, fast chargers are being put up on roads to charge the undercarriage of an electric vehicle, which may have batteries below that, on the bottom, on the chassis. Solar power being generated on the roads is frankly not a good idea unless the road is not being used much. Because if the cars keep going on and off the panel, it's going to completely mess up your electricity generation out of those panels. And to my mind, that will make the grid frequency also quite unstable. As regards the transmission losses, I'd like to correct you, sir. India's transmission losses are comparable to world standards. And these days, India doesn't benchmark to any developing nation. We like to benchmark ourselves to the best in the world. So I'm now looking at improving transmission by another 1%. Looking at Korea's example. Korea has been very successful in bringing down transmission losses. Currently, India is about 3.5%, 4% in transmission losses. Possibly, and underground transmission at the distribution level makes a lot of sense at the low voltages. But for transmission lines, I was myself exploring the idea because of land acquisition problems. But the 132 and all those larger cables, I am given to understand, are not feasible to move underground. Anything above 400, I think, is positively not possible. At the smaller level of distribution cables, it's a very good idea. We are doing it in Varanasi, in the Kashi city area, old city area. We are trying to bring in underground cables just like Mumbai. And I'm also toying with the idea to seeing how we can take more and more city infrastructure underground. That's at the distribution level, where the losses are much higher. At the distribution level, country certainly has a lot of losses. Again, those losses are more in the rural areas or in the industrial areas. But all said and done, it's very important that we curb those losses. Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana is the program which is focusing to bring down AT&C losses, and underground cabling at the distribution level can certainly play a very important role to bring down those losses. Ma'am, about sustainable lifestyles, While government cannot directly mandate or force a person to live a particular type of life. If somebody's got the money, he's going to live the life he wants. I don't think we are living in a socialistic or a communist world where governments can dictate to somebody that you are allowed this and you are not allowed this, in most parts of the world at least. But what governments can do is create a lot of awareness. What governments can do is certainly bring in some laws which will mandate, let's say, new buildings being constructed in a more efficient manner, probably moving towards net zero buildings or moving towards proper platinum or gold certified buildings. So building efficiency codes can certainly be mandated and can help to improve wastages in power consumption. On the fuel side, on petroleum and diesel, many countries in the world, including India, are working for more and more efficient vehicles on the roads so that carbon dioxide and pollution is reduced. In fact, India has just advanced by 5 years the adoption of, I think it's BS6 standards. Yes. So we are going to be amongst the world's most efficient standards on the automobile side. On LEDs, the consumption of electricity for lighting, today India is a world leader. From a nominal share of 0.2% of market share in the world on LEDs, in less than 2 years, we have grown to 16% market share in the world. From a situation where India used to sell, the government company which was mandated to sell LED bulbs, from a level of 600,000 LED bulbs in a year, that also on the back of significant subsidies, we have reached a stage that today we are selling 600,000 LED bulbs every day. From a year to a day, 6 lakh bulbs, 600,000. At prices which are 88% less than what they were 2 years ago. But this is a government program. That's how government has been able to penetrate the length and breadth of the country through our distribution network and ramp up this consumption of LEDs so that one company alone, a government company at that, is currently in a position that in the last 22 months, they have sold 200 million LED bulbs. 200 million LED bulbs. And by 2019, we hope to increase it to 770 million. And just this one program will reduce our peak load demand by 22,000 megawatt, will reduce consumption of electricity by about 112 billion kilowatt hour or units of electricity, will save our consumers $6.5 billion annually on their electricity bills. $6.5 billion, ladies and gentlemen. And what would be icing on the cake for the nation and for our people, 80 million tons of carbon dioxide reduction every year. Just this one program. That's how governments can make people conscious, can support the rollout of efficiency programs, energy conservation programs. What I talked about, the office complexes, be it in London or New York or Washington, Sydney, you name the country, you look out of your window at the night time, particularly in business districts, and you'll see millions of lights, which really are except making the city look pretty from the aircraft you are traveling in late at night, really have no role to be on. Nobody working in tall buildings, but all lights on. And on to the extent, not even a subtle dim lighting, on as if it was bright daylight, as if there were 50 people working in each room. Now, those are things which certainly governments can play a role. And these are small messages. When you talk to a poor person in a village in India and you try to explain to him to be energy efficient, explain to him to not waste energy, explain to him to use an LED bulb and save energy, and then on his television screen he sees this kind of waste, I think it's a very, very unfair situation, and that's the situation we are trying to change. The people of India are with us. Both the government of India and the people of India believe that climate change is a serious threat. We need to tackle it. We are committed to fighting the problem of pollution, fighting the problem of waste. We are committed to preparing India to be a responsible global citizen contribute to saving the planet from climate change, be an energy efficient, be a nation which uses sustainable forms of electricity more and more in the years that go ahead of us, because we believe that nature is precious. It's intrinsic to the Indian belief. Traditionally, our culture, historically, you go back 5,000 years also, India respected nature. India almost prayed to the wind god, sun god, water god, sea god. For us, nature is very, very precious, very holy for that matter. And I think the people of India will live up to our commitments made at Paris, the nationally determined contributions. I personally believe we'll even better those commitments that we have made, those contributions we have talked about. But India will certainly be a leading player in the world in our effort to address this serious challenge, and nobody can trump it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Minister. This brings us to the close of this panel. There are more questions, but I'm sorry we've run out of time and we will not be able to take any more questions. Very, very clear messages about India's pathways, about how India is going to transition. So thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank
Great
you.
talking to you.
Thank you for this opportunity.